Park Do-hun was eating his lunch in the medical bay when the alarm screamed through Waystation Aerith. He dropped his food and ran to the window. Outside, against the black of space, he saw a ship that looked like something had taken bites out of it. Fire burned in 3 places. Escape pods shot out from its sides like seeds from a dying fruit. "Velith Colony ship," the station voice announced. "Mass casualty event. All medical staff report to Docking Bay 7. Do-hun grabbed his emergency kit and ran. The docking bay was chaos when he arrived. Hundreds of Velith stumbled out of rescue shuttles, their pale blue skin covered in burns and cuts. They were tall beings, thin like young trees, with large dark eyes that showed every emotion. Right now those eyes showed fear and pain and the empty look of people who had lost everything. Do-hun had never worked with Velith before. He knew almost nothing about them. But he knew burns, and he knew shock, and he knew that look on their faces. He had seen it on humans after disasters. Pain was the same in any language. He moved to the nearest Velith, a young female sitting on the floor. Her arm was badly burned. She was shaking. "I'm a medic," he said slowly. "I'm going to help you." She looked up at him with those huge, dark eyes. She said something in her language that his translator turned into, "It hurts." "I know," Do-hun said. "I know it does." He knelt beside her and took her burned arm gently in his hands. He had burn gel in his kit. He spread it carefully over the wound, working with steady fingers. The Velith went very still. Do-hun looked up, worried he had hurt her, but she was not showing pain. She was showing something else. Her eyes had gone wide. Her mouth was slightly open. She was staring at his hands on her arm. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Am I hurting you?" She did not answer. She reached out with her other hand and touched his wrist. Just touched it, the way a person might touch something they could not believe was real. "Your skin," she whispered. Do-hun did not understand. He finished treating her burn and wrapped it in clean bandages. The whole time, she kept her fingers on his wrist. Her hand was trembling, but not from pain anymore. "You need to rest," he told her. "Someone will take you to the refugee area. You'll be safe there." He started to stand, but she grabbed his hand. She held it tight, like a child holding a parent's hand in a storm. "What are you?" she asked. Do-hun blinked. "I'm a medic." "I'm human. Human," she repeated. She said the word like it was new to her, like she was tasting it. "What is that? What are you?" I'm just a person," he said. "I'm just trying to help." He gently pulled his hand free. There were so many others who needed him. He could not stay with one patient. But as he moved away, he looked back at her. She was still staring at her own hand, the one that had touched him. She was crying, but she was also smiling. He did not understand. The next hours were a blur. Do-hun treated burns and breaks and shock. He held hands and steadied shoulders and spoke soft words to beings he had never met. The other medics wore gloves, he noticed. The other species kept distance from the Velith, touched them only with tools. But Do-hun had not known he was supposed to do that. He touched them the way he would touch any patient. Skin to skin, hand to hand, and every time they reacted the same way. They went still. They stared. Some of them cried. One old male grabbed Do-hun's face in both hands and looked into his eyes and said words the translator could not handle, words that came out as holy and impossible and warm. Do-hun did not understand any of it. He was tired. His hands hurt. He just kept working. When his shift finally ended, he sat in the break room and drank cold water and tried to stop his hands from shaking. Another medic, a Tarani with hard shell skin and practical eyes, sat across from him. "You touched them," she said. "The Velith. You touched them with bare hands." "Was I not supposed to?" Do-hun asked. Most species don't. Velith are sensitive. Their skin feels everything very deeply. Most beings find it strange to touch them, and Velith do not usually like to be touched by outsiders. They didn't seem to mind, Dohun said. The Torani looked at him for a long moment. No, she said slowly. They didn't seem to mind at all. Dohun went home to his small room on the station. He took a shower. He tried to sleep. But he kept seeing that young female's face, the way she had looked at him like he was something impossible. He kept feeling her hand on his wrist, trembling. He did not know that her name was Yira. He did not know that she was, at that very moment, walking through the station with a bandaged arm and a racing heart, looking for a temple. He did not know that she would find the small Velith temple near the market district, and she would walk inside, and she would find Elder Korath preparing for evening prayers. He did not know that she would stand before the old cleric and struggle to find words for what she had felt. He did not know that she would finally say, "His human skin feels like God." He did not know that those words would change everything. Dohun slept badly that night. He dreamed of hands reaching for him, hundreds of hands, all of them desperate for something he did not know how to give. In the morning, he got up and went back to work. He was just a medic. He was just trying to help. But the galaxy had already started to shift around him, like a great machine whose gears had begun to turn. And whether he wanted it or not, whether he understood it or not, Park Dohun was now at the center of it all. A human. Just a human. And to some, that was the most impossible thing in the universe. He had studied every sacred text. He had made the pilgrimage to the quiet moons 3 times. He had fasted for months in dark caves, waiting for the divine warmth to touch him. He had felt it only twice in his entire life, brief moments of perfect peace, of feeling held by something larger than himself. Those 2 moments had defined his faith. They were the most precious things he had ever experienced. And now this young female stood before him and said she had felt the same thing from some alien's hands. "You are confused," Korath said. His voice was gentle but firm. "You were injured. You were in shock. The medics gave you drugs for pain. What you felt was medicine, not the divine." "It was not medicine," Yira said. She stood in the small temple with her burned arm wrapped in white bandages. The temple was a quiet place, with soft lights and the smell of sweet herbs burning. Korath had built it himself when he came to this station 5 years ago. It was modest, but it was holy. "Tell me again," he said. "Tell me exactly what you felt." Yira closed her eyes. He took my arm in his hands. His skin touched my skin. And then, she struggled for words. It was like being filled with warm water. It started where he touched me and spread through my whole body. The pain stopped. The fear stopped. I felt like I was held, like I was safe, like I was loved. Not by him, he was just a stranger, but loved by something through him. Korath felt cold. She was describing the divine warmth perfectly. Every mystic text described it the same way. But those texts also said it came only through years of devotion, through sacred rituals, through the grace of distant gods. Not through some random alien's hands. "You were traumatized," he said again. "The mind can create false experiences when—" It was not false. Yira opened her eyes. There were tears on her face, but her voice was steady. "I have prayed my whole life," she said. "I have done the rituals. I have followed the path, and I never felt anything, nothing. I thought the gods did not want me. I thought I was empty inside, that I was not worthy. And then this human I never met before, touched me for 5 minutes, and I felt what the mystics write poems about. What does that mean, Elder? What does that mean about everything we believe?" Korath had no answer. He sent her away with soft words and promises to meditate on her experience. But when she was gone, he sat alone in the temple and felt his hands shake. Over the next 3 days, more Veleth came to him. They came alone and in pairs. They came with the same story. A human had touched them during the rescue. A human had held their hand, or steadied their shoulder, or cleaned their wounds. And they had felt it, the warmth, the presence, the thing their whole religion was built around finding. One old male wept as he told his story. "I have walked the path for 50 years, he said. I have never felt the gods, and then this creature with strange, flat eyes touched my face, and I felt them everywhere." Korath did not know what to do. He thought about reporting this to the High Council on the homeworld, but he was afraid. Afraid they would think he had failed his flock. Afraid they would say the refugees were all mad with trauma. Afraid that he himself was somehow responsible for this blasphemy. On the 4th day, a Veleth female came to the temple that Korath did not know. She was not from the colony ship. She was a journalist named Tovan who worked for a galactic news network. "I heard interesting stories," Tovan said. She was younger than Korath, with sharp eyes and a quick way of talking. "Stories about humans and divine experiences. I want to know if they're true." "They are confused refugees," Korath said carefully. "They have been through terrible things. Their minds are—" "I have talked to 12 of them," Tovan cut in. 12 separate people with the same story. That's not confusion. That's a pattern." Korath was silent. "I am going to write about this," Tovan said. "The galaxy will want to know. But I am giving you a chance to speak first. Do you believe these people, Elder? Do you believe humans carry the divine warmth in their skin?" "I don't know what I believe," Korath said honestly. Tovan smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Then maybe you should find out. Touch a human yourself. See what happens." She left, and Korath sat alone again. Touch a human himself. The idea was terrifying. If he touched one and felt nothing, then his people's experiences were false, and he would have to tell them their faith had tricked them. But if he touched one and felt something, then everything he had devoted his life to would need to be questioned. For 2 more days, he did nothing. He prayed. He read the sacred texts. He looked for any passage that might explain what was happening. He found nothing. On the 7th day after the colony ship arrived, Elder Korath made his decision. He would go to the human medic, the one called Park Do-hoon, who seemed to be at the center of all these stories. He would thank the human for helping his people, and during that meeting, he would shake the human's hand. He would know the truth. He sent a message to the medical bay requesting a meeting. The response came back within an hour. The human would be happy to meet with him. Korath prepared himself the way he would prepare for any sacred ritual. He cleansed himself. He said prayers. He wore his formal robes. He walked to the medical bay with his heart beating hard in his chest. He told himself he was not afraid. He told himself he was ready for whatever truth he found. He was lying on both counts, but he went anyway because he was a servant of his faith, and his faith was now demanding answers he could not give. The human was waiting for him. And Korath's whole world was about to crack open. He had never met a religious leader of any species before. He did not know the right way to act or the right things to say. He had looked up information about Veleth customs on his computer, but most of it was confusing. Something about not touching them because their skin was sensitive. But he had already touched dozens of them during the rescue. It was too late to worry about that now. He waited in a small meeting room near the medical bay. He had changed into clean clothes. He had even tried to fix his hair, though it never did what he wanted. The door opened, and Elder Korath walked in. The old Veleth was tall and thin, like all his kind, but he carried himself with a straight back and calm movements. He wore long robes in dark colors with symbols that Do-hoon did not recognize. His face was serious but not unfriendly. "Elder Korath," Do-hoon said. He gave a small bow, because that seemed respectful. "Thank you for coming. I hope I didn't do anything wrong when I treated your people. I didn't know all the customs. I'm sorry if I—" "You did nothing wrong," Korath said. His voice was deep and steady. "You helped my people when they needed it. I came to thank you for that." "Oh!" Dohun relaxed a little. "That's good. I mean, you're welcome. I was just doing my job." They stood there for a moment in awkward silence. Dohun did not know what to do with his hands. He put them in his pockets, then took them out again. "I understand you touched many of my people," Korath said. "With your bare hands." "Yes. Is that a problem?" "I read that Velith's skin is sensitive, but I didn't know that before the rescue. I just treated them like I would treat anyone." "And how do you treat people?" Korath asked. Dohun shrugged. "I hold their hands if they're scared. I touch their shoulders to steady them. I try to make them feel like they're not alone. When you're hurt and afraid, sometimes you just need someone to be there, someone to hold on to." Korath was staring at him with an expression Dohun could not read. "That is unusual," the elder said slowly. "Most species do not touch so freely." "Humans do," Dohun said. "We're social. We need contact. Babies who aren't held enough don't develop right. Even adults get sick if they go too long without touching another person. It's just how we're made." Korath nodded slowly. He seemed to be thinking about something, working through some problem in his mind. "I would like to thank you properly," Korath said. "In the human way. I understand humans shake hands as a greeting and a sign of respect." "Oh, sure." Dohun smiled and held out his hand. "That's nice of you." Korath looked at the hand. He did not move. Dohun felt awkward again. "You don't have to. If it's not your custom—" "No." Korath's voice was tight. "I want to." The old Velith reached out and took Dohun's hand. Their skin touched. Korath's whole body went stiff. His eyes flew open wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He was squeezing Dohun's hand hard, too hard, his thin fingers pressing into Dohun's skin. "Are you okay?" Dohun asked, alarmed. "Elder, are you—" Korath pulled his hand away. He stepped back. He was shaking. His breathing was fast and uneven. "Elder Korath?" Dohun stepped toward him, worried. "Should I call a medic? Are you having some kind of reaction?" "No." Korath held up a hand to stop him. "No, I am well. I am—" He did not finish the sentence. He turned away. Dohun could see his shoulders moving as he breathed. When he turned back, there were tears on his face. Dohun had no idea what was happening. "I must go," Korath said. His voice was rough. "Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything." He walked out of the room before Dohun could say another word. Dohun stood there alone, confused and worried. Had he done something wrong? Had the handshake hurt the elder somehow? Should he report this to someone? He decided to send a message to Korath later, to check if he was all right. Then he went back to work, because there were still refugees who needed care. He did not know what he had just done. Elder Korath walked through the station in a daze. He did not see the people around him. He did not hear the noise of the market district. He walked until he found an empty hallway, and then he stopped and leaned against the wall and let himself feel what he was feeling. The warmth was still in him. It had faded from its first overwhelming flood, but it was still there. A glow in his chest, a feeling of being held, of being seen, of being loved in a way that had nothing to do with his actions or his worth or his devotion. He had felt the divine warmth twice before in 60 years of trying. Twice. After fasting and prayer and pilgrimage. And now he had felt it from a handshake with a human who was just doing his job. Korath began to laugh. Then the laugh turned into a sob. Then he was doing both at the same time. laughing and crying in an empty hallway, feeling like his whole life had been a ladder to a window that was actually a door. Either his entire faith was wrong about how to find the divine, or humans were something his faith had never even imagined. He could not keep this to himself. This was too big. This would shake the foundations of everything. He returned to the temple and wrote a message to the High Council of the Path of Distant Stars. He told them what had happened. He told them what he had felt. He told them they needed to call an emergency meeting. The response came within hours. The High Council would gather. Representatives would come to the station. This matter would be investigated at the highest level. The gears were turning now. The machine was moving. And Park Do-hoon, who was at that moment eating dinner alone in his small room and wondering if he should watch a movie or go to sleep early, had no idea that he had just started a revolution. The headline was simple: Velith refugees claim human touch feels divine. Within hours, it was everywhere. The galactic networks picked it up and spread it across 1,000 worlds. People read it during their morning meals. They talked about it at work. They argued about it in transit stations and market squares and temples. The story included interviews with 15 Velith refugees who had been touched by humans during the rescue. They all said the same thing. The human's skin had filled them with warmth and peace. It felt like what their religion described as the divine warmth, the touch of the gods. Most readers thought it was nonsense. A strange story from traumatized people, nothing more. But then other stories started coming out. A Dren trader sent a message to a news network. 3 years ago, his ship had caught fire near a human colony. A human rescue team had saved him. One of the humans had carried him out of the burning ship. He had felt something he could not explain. Peace. Safety. Like being held by his mother when he was young. He had never forgotten it. A Tarani soldier shared her experience. She had been badly wounded in a battle. A human nurse had held her claw while she was waiting for surgery. The soldier had been sure she was dying, but instead of fear, she had felt calm, ready, almost happy. She had always thought it was the drugs. Now she was not so sure. More stories came, dozens of them, then hundreds. Beings from many different species who had been touched by humans and felt something strange. Something they had never felt from any other contact. The galaxy began to ask, what are humans? Commander Bren of Waystation Aerith had a problem. She was Tarani, practical, direct, not interested in religious matters. She just wanted to run her station and keep everyone safe. But now her station was becoming the center of a galactic debate about humans and gods. Ships were arriving every day. Velith pilgrims who wanted to be touched by the human medic, journalists who wanted interviews, religious scholars who wanted to study the phenomenon, and also protesters, beings who thought the whole thing was blasphemy or fraud or some kind of human trick. The station was not built for this many visitors. The housing areas were full. The food supplies were running low. People were arguing in the corridors. 3 fights had already broken out between believers and skeptics, and at the center of it all was one human who just wanted to be left alone. Commander Bren called Park Do-hoon to her office. "This is not your fault," she said first. "I want you to know that. You did nothing wrong." "Thank you," Do-hoon said. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. "But it doesn't feel that way." "I know. But we need to manage this situation. The High Council of the Velith Faith is sending representatives. Other religions are sending observers. The Morith Collective is demanding that we let their scientists study you." "Study me?" Do-hoon looked alarmed. "I'm not a lab animal." "I know. I won't force you to do anything. But we need to find some way to calm things down." "People want answers." "I don't have answers," Do-hoon said. "I don't know why this is happening. I'm just a medic. I'm not special. I'm not divine. I'm just a person." Bren believed him. She had known humans before. They were warm beings, friendly, social, quick to help. But they were also fragile. and short-lived and full of doubts. They were not gods, but something was happening. Something real, and they needed to figure out what it was. "The Velith High Council will announce their findings in 3 days," Bren said. "Whatever they say will shape how the galaxy sees this. We should prepare for anything." Do-hoon nodded, but he did not look hopeful. Outside the station, the debate was growing louder. Religious leaders from many species spoke publicly about what was happening. Some said it was a sign from the gods, that humans were sacred messengers sent to bring the divine closer to mortal beings. Others said it was blasphemy, that no creature could carry the divine in its skin, and anyone who said otherwise was lying or deceived. The Morith Collective, a powerful group of species who did not believe in any gods, said it was all biology. Human skin must produce some chemical or energy that affected other species' brains. It was a trick of nature, not a sign of anything divine. They demanded that humans be studied so the trick could be understood and explained. Humans across the galaxy watched all of this with confusion and discomfort. They did not feel divine. They did not feel like messengers of gods. They just felt like themselves. People who liked to hug their friends and hold hands with their children and touch the shoulders of people who were sad. Was that really so strange? Apparently, to the rest of the galaxy, it was. Most species did not touch casually. Physical contact was for family, for mates, for medical treatment. The idea of touching strangers to comfort them was unusual. Alien, weird, human. Back on the station, Yira found Do-hoon in the refugee shelter where he still volunteered. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is all because of me. I'm the one who told Elder Korath. I'm the one who started this." "You didn't do anything wrong," Do-hoon said. "You just told the truth about what you felt. But now everyone wants something from you. Pilgrims want you to touch them. Scientists want to study you. Believers want you to be a god." "This is not fair to you." Do-hoon shrugged. "I don't know what to do about it. I can't change what I am." "What are you?" Yira asked. "Really? What are humans?" Do-hoon thought about it for a long moment. "We're just people who got used to being warm," he said. "We came from a dangerous world. We survived by taking care of each other, by staying close, by touching." He looked at his own hands. "I don't think there's anything magical about it. It's just how we grew up, how we evolved." Yira reached out and took his hand. The warmth filled her again, gentle and steady. "Maybe that's what magic is," she said. "Maybe magic is just love that became instinct." Do-hoon did not know what to say to that. But for the first time since this all started, he felt like maybe someone understood. The High Council would speak in 3 days. The galaxy was holding its breath. And in a small refugee shelter on Waystation Aerith, a human and a Velith sat together and held hands, and neither of them knew that they were sitting at the center of the universe. Elder Korath stood before the cameras in the great hall of the Path of Distant Stars. Behind him sat the High Council, 20 of the most respected religious leaders of his people. They had debated for days. They had prayed and argued and studied. And now they had reached a conclusion. The galaxy watched. "We have investigated the claims," Korath began. His voice was calm, but Do-hoon, watching from the station, could see the tension in his shoulders. "We have spoken to the refugees. We have examined medical records. And many of us, including myself, have touched humans directly to understand what our people experienced." He paused. The silence was heavy. "The claims are true." A wave of noise went through the hall. The council members shifted in their seats. Across the galaxy, billions of beings reacted, with shock, with triumph, with anger, with fear. "Human touch produces what our faith calls the divine warmth," Korath continued. "We do not fully understand how or why, but we can no longer deny that it happens." He raised a hand to quiet the noise. This raises difficult questions. For thousands of years, we have taught that the divine warmth comes only through devotion, through ritual, through the grace of distant gods. If it can come from the skin of an alien species, what does that mean for our teachings? The hall was silent again. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Some say it means our faith is false, that we have been wrong about everything. Others say it means humans are gods in mortal form, divine messengers sent to bring us closer to the sacred. Korath shook his head slowly. I do not believe either of these things. He stepped forward, closer to the cameras. I believe our faith was never false, but I believe it was incomplete. We always knew the divine existed. We always knew the warmth was real. We simply did not know all the forms it could take. He spread his hands wide. Perhaps the gods are not as distant as we thought. Perhaps they have always been speaking to us, and we simply did not know all the languages they use. The human touch may be one of those languages, not a replacement for our rituals, but an addition to them. Not proof that our faith was wrong, but proof that the divine is larger than we imagined. The council members nodded behind him. This was the conclusion they had reached together. We do not worship humans, Korath said firmly. They are mortal beings with flaws and limits just as we are. But we recognize that something sacred moves through them, something that resonates with the deepest parts of our faith. And we must have the courage to learn from this rather than fear it. He bowed his head. May the warmth guide us all. The broadcast ended. The reaction was immediate and everywhere. Many Velith embraced the council's conclusion. It let them keep their faith while accepting what they had experienced. The path of distant stars was not broken. It was simply wider than they had known. But many others were angry. Conservative Velith accused the council of betraying sacred tradition. They said Korath had been deceived, that humans had somehow tricked him. Some declared him a heretic and called for him to be removed. Other species had their own reactions. The Dren began to include humans in their stories of healing spirits. Their myths spoke of beings who could take away pain through touch, and now they believed they had found such beings in the real universe. Human traders in Dren space suddenly found themselves treated with new respect and sometimes fear. The Torani had a different view. Their faith was built around the trials of fire, the idea that suffering made the spirit strong. But they also believed in the calm after flame, the peace that came when the trial was over. They began to see humans as living symbols of that calm. Humans were not gods, but they were reminders that peace existed. And then there was the Church of the Warm Hand. It appeared on dozens of worlds within weeks of the broadcast, a new religion built entirely around humans. Its followers believed humans were divine messengers, that their touch was sacred, and that humanity should be worshipped as the closest beings to the gods. Churches opened. Prayers were written. Some humans were approached on the street by beings who wanted to touch them, who begged to touch them, who fell to their knees and called them holy. Humans were horrified. On Earth and the human colonies, people watched the news with growing discomfort. They did not want to be worshipped. They did not want to be seen as gods. They were just people. They made mistakes. They hurt each other. They had wars and crimes and cruelty like any other species. How could anyone think they were divine? The Church of the Warm Hand kept growing. Pilgrims traveled to human worlds. They waited outside human homes. They followed humans in the streets, hoping for a touch, a blessing, a moment of contact with the sacred. Some humans refused to leave their homes. Some got angry and shouted at the pilgrims. Some took advantage and charged money for their touch. It was chaos. Back on Waystation Aerith, Do-Hun watched it all happen and felt sick. This was not what he wanted. He had never asked to be the center of anything. He had just wanted to help people. And now his whole species was being turned into something they were not. Yira came to him the night after the broadcast. "You need to speak," she said. "You need to tell them the truth about what humans are. You're the one they all talk about. They'll listen to you." "I can't," Do-hoon said. "I'm not a speaker. I'm not a leader. I'm just a medic." "You're the human who started this. Whether you wanted to or not, you're part of this story now. And if you don't speak, others will speak for you. They'll make you into something you're not." Do-hoon was quiet for a long time. He thought about the refugees he had treated. He thought about Korath's face when they shook hands. He thought about the pilgrims waiting outside the station, hoping for his touch. He thought about what Yira had said, that maybe magic was just love that became instinct. If that was true, then people needed to understand what human love really was. Not divine, not sacred, just warm. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll speak." Yira smiled at him. She took his hand. "Tell them the truth," she said. "That's all you have to do." Do-hoon nodded. He just hoped the truth would be enough. No great hall, no council behind him, just Park Do-hoon sitting in a plain room on way station Aerith, looking into a camera. He wore his medic uniform because he did not own formal clothes. His hair was messy because it always was. He looked tired and nervous, and completely ordinary. The galaxy watched. Do-hoon cleared his throat. He had written notes, but he did not look at them. He had decided to just speak from his heart, even if the words came out wrong. "My name is Park Do-hoon," he began. "I'm a medic. A few weeks ago, I treated some Velith refugees after their ship was damaged. I held their hands and touched their wounds and tried to make them feel less afraid. I didn't know it was going to cause all this." He paused, took a breath. "I've seen what people are saying about humans. Some say we're divine. Some say we're sacred messengers from the gods. Some are building churches to worship us. I need to tell you that's not true. None of that is true." He leaned forward slightly. "Humans are not gods. We're mortal. We get sick. We get old. We die. We make mistakes all the time. We hurt each other. We have wars. We have crimes. We have people who are cruel and selfish and terrible. We're just as flawed as any other species in this galaxy." He shook his head. "I don't know why our touch makes other species feel what it does. I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you what I think is happening." He looked down at his hands for a moment, then back at the camera. "Humans evolved on a dangerous world. Everything there wanted to kill us. The weather, the animals, the diseases. We were not the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we took care of each other. We stayed in groups. We watched out for each other. We shared food and protected each other's children and held each other when we were hurt or scared." His voice grew steadier as he spoke. "Touch became important to us. Really important. Human babies need to be held or they don't develop right. Human adults get sick, actually physically sick, if they go too long without touching another person. Our bodies are built to need contact, and when we touch each other, our bodies release chemicals that reduce pain and fear. It's just biology. It's just how we're made." He spread his hands. "That's all it is. When I hold someone's hand, my body produces chemicals that make me feel calm and connected. And somehow, that seems to transfer to whoever I'm touching. It's not divine. It's not sacred. It's just warmth. Just care. Just one living thing trying to comfort another." He let that sit for a moment. "I don't want to be worshipped. No human does. We're not worthy of that. We're just people. But I understand why this matters to so many of you. Because from what I've learned about the galaxy, most species don't touch each other much. Contact is rare, reserved for family or mates. Strangers don't touch." He leaned forward again. "Humans touch all the time. We hug our friends. We pat each other on the back. We hold hands with people we just met if they're sad or scared. We think that's normal. But I'm starting to realize that maybe it's not normal. Maybe it's rare. Maybe the galaxy is colder than it should be. His voice softened. And I think maybe that's why our touch feels like something divine to you. Because it's not just the chemicals in our skin. It's what those chemicals mean. They mean someone cares, someone is there, someone is willing to be close to you, even if they don't know you. That's what our touch carries, the message that you're not alone. He sat back. I'm not asking you to worship us. I'm not even asking you to understand us. I'm just asking you to learn from us. Touch more, hold each other, stop being so afraid of closeness. You don't need humans to feel this warmth. You can create it yourselves. You can give it to each other. He looked directly into the camera. Maybe the gods did make humans different. Or maybe we just got lucky with our evolution. Either way, we are what we are. Warm things in a cold universe, reaching out for each other because we can't survive any other way. You can call that divine if you want, but I just call it being human. He paused. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the galaxy was quiet. Then the reactions began. Some people dismissed it. They said Do-hun was being humble, that he didn't understand his own divinity. The Church of the Warm Hand continued to grow. But many others heard something different. They heard a simple message. You can do this too. You can touch. You can hold. You can be warm. On a Dren trading ship, 2 crew members who had never touched before clasped hands after watching the broadcast. They felt nothing divine, but they felt connected. On a Terrani military base, a soldier put her claw on the shoulder of a comrade who had received bad news from home. It was awkward. It was unusual, but it helped. On the Velith homeworld, a young priest began teaching a new practice. Touch as prayer. Not to channel the divine, but to create it. To be the warmth you want to feel. It was not a revolution. Not at first. It was small things. Little changes. Hands that reached out when they would not have before. Contact that was given and received by beings who had always kept distance. But small things can grow. And on Waystation Aerith, Do-hun turned off the camera and sat alone in the quiet room. He did not know if his words had made any difference. He did not know if anyone would listen. Yira came in a few minutes later. That was good, she said. That was true. I don't know if it will help, Do-hun said. It will. She sat beside him. Maybe not everyone, maybe not right away, but some people will hear it, and they'll change, and they'll teach others, and slowly things will be different. She took his hand. The warmth filled her, steady and gentle. This is what you gave us, she said. This is what you taught us, not to worship you, but to be more like you. Do-hun looked at their joined hands. I didn't teach anything, he said. I just held on. Yira smiled. Maybe that's all teaching is, she said, just holding on and showing others how. They sat together as the station hummed around them, and across the galaxy, hands began to reach for each other, slowly, carefully, but reaching. It did not look different. The same metal corridors, the same market districts, the same docking bays where ships came and went. But anyone who had been there before would notice the change the moment they stepped off their ship. People were touching. Not everywhere, not everyone, but enough to see. A Velith and a Terrani sitting together in a food hall, their arms touching while they ate. A Dren trader clasping hands with a customer after making a deal. 2 strangers bumping shoulders in a crowded corridor and pausing to nod at each other instead of pulling away. It was small, it was quiet, but it was everywhere. Park Do-hun walked through the station on his way to work. He still wore his medic uniform. He still had messy hair. He still looked like the same ordinary human he had always been. But people knew him now. They nodded as he passed. Some smiled. A few reached out to touch his arm or shoulder as he walked by, not to worship him. not to take something from him, just to connect, just to say, I see you. I'm here. He nodded back. He let them touch. He was used to it now. A year ago, the pilgrims had overwhelmed him. They had waited outside his door. They had followed him through the station. They had begged for his touch like it was water in a desert. But slowly, after his broadcast, things had changed. The Church of the Warm Hand still existed, but it was smaller now. Many of its followers had heard Do-hoon's message and understood it. They did not need to worship humans. They could be warm themselves. They could touch each other. They could create the divine instead of waiting for it. Some of the pilgrims had stayed on the station and started teaching others. They called it the practice of warm hands. It was not a religion. It was just a set of simple teachings: how to touch safely, how to ask permission, how to be present with another being, how to give and receive comfort. Yira was one of the teachers. She had found her purpose in this work. She taught Velith and Dren and Torani and a dozen other species how to do what humans did naturally. She told them about Do-hoon and what his touch had felt like, and then she taught them how to create that feeling for each other. You don't need a human, she told her students. You just need to be willing to be close, to be warm, to care. It was not easy for most species. They had spent their whole lives avoiding casual touch. Their bodies did not produce the same chemicals that human bodies did. The warmth they felt from each other was different, quieter, less intense. But it was still there. And it grew with practice. Elder Korath had rewritten some of the sacred texts. The path of distant stars had become the path of warm hands. The old prayers were still there, the old rituals still honored. But new sections had been added. Sections about touch as sacred practice, about creating the divine warmth instead of waiting to receive it, about the gods speaking through contact, through closeness, through care. Not all Velith accepted the changes. Some still followed the old ways and called Korath a heretic. But many others embraced the new teachings. They found something in the practice that they had never found in the old rituals. Not just hope for divine connection, but actual experience of it, every day, with each other. Other religions had made similar changes. The Dren had added new stories to their myths, stories about beings who learned to be healing spirits instead of waiting for them to appear. The Torani had expanded their idea of the calm after flame. It was not just something you felt after suffering, but something you could give to others who were suffering. The galaxy was changing, not everywhere, not completely. There were still species who kept their distance, cultures that did not accept touch. There were still conflicts and wars and cruelties. Humans had not saved the galaxy or fixed its problems. But they had shown it something. They had reminded it of something it had forgotten, that living things need each other. That warmth is not weakness, that reaching out is not surrender. And slowly, being by being, world by world, the reaching continued. On a quiet evening, Do-hoon finished his shift and walked to the small temple that Korath had built years ago. He went there sometimes to sit in the peace. He was not religious, but he liked the quiet. Korath was there, preparing for evening prayers. Do-hoon, the old Velith said warmly, I'm glad to see you. Elder. Do-hoon sat on one of the benches. How are you? Tired. Happy. The usual. Korath finished his preparations and came to sit beside Do-hoon. Their shoulders touched. Neither of them moved away. Do you remember the first time we met? Korath asked. You shook my hand and then ran out of the room. Korath laughed. I was terrified. I thought my whole world was falling apart. Was it? Yes and no. Korath looked at his hands. The world I knew fell apart, but a better one grew in its place. I think that's how growth always works. Something has to break before something new can come. Do-hoon thought about that. I didn't mean to break anything. he said. I know. That's why you were able to. Korath turned to look at him. You were wrong, you know. In your broadcast. Dohun raised his eyebrows. About what? You said you didn't teach anything. You said you just held on. But that's not true. You taught us that holding on is the most important thing. You taught us that being warm is not simple or small. You taught us that the divine is not distant. It's in every hand that reaches out. Korath put his hand on Dohun's shoulder. You are not a god, I know that. But you reminded us what we were supposed to be. And that is no small thing. Dohun did not know what to say. He never knew what to say when people talked like this. So he just sat there, warm and present, as the temple settled into evening peace around them. Outside, the station hummed with life. Beings of many species walked through the corridors, some alone, some together. Here and there, hands reached out. Shoulders touched. Contact was made. It was not paradise. It was not the end of all problems. It was just a little more warmth in a cold universe. But sometimes, that's enough. And across 1,000 worlds, beings who had always prayed to the sky began to reach for each other instead. The gods, if they were watching, were pleased. Or maybe they had been reaching all along, and everyone was finally reaching back.